Welcome everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to be your teacher today as we dive into this masterclass on what Montessori-inspired design actually means. And let me tell you right off the bat, it goes way, way beyond just calm colors and aesthetic wooden toys. Whether you're a parent organizing a playroom at home, a teacher setting up your classroom for the year, or even a designer building educational products, you are exactly in the right place. We're going to decode the invisible mechanics of these spaces.
So, here is our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start by breaking down the core learning loop. Then we'll talk about how to make choices readable. After that, we'll redefine what true independence actually looks like, break down 3 key design levers, cover some common mistakes, and finish up with a little bit of practice. Let's get right into it.
By the end of our time together, you won't just be copying a look you saw online. You are going to have the expert judgment to build environments that quietly teach and support real, genuine independence. You'll know exactly how to evaluate any room, or any product for that matter, by the behaviors it actively encourages, rather than just by how pretty it looks sitting on a shelf.
Now, we very often mistake Montessori for just a decorative style. You know the look, the illusion of tidy trays, minimalist colors, those perfectly arranged low shelves. But those are just the visible traces of a much deeper system. We absolutely have to stop optimizing for decoration and adult convenience. Instead, we need to start optimizing for the engine underneath it all. We're building a system that reduces hesitation, naturally guides behavior, and promotes a child's self-construction.
All right, let's move to our first concept and look under the hood at that core mechanism. How does a room itself actually become a teacher?
The exact sequence that makes this all work is pretty straightforward, but it's incredibly powerful. It's a chain reaction. The environment shapes attention shapes action, and action shapes development. A well-designed room quietly answers questions like, "Where do I start?" before the child even has to ask them. It directs their attention naturally, which leads right into independent action.
Here's your first memory tip for today, and you might want to write this one down. The room is a form of guidance, not decoration. If a designer creates a space packed with too much visual clutter, it creates way too many possible beginnings. And you know what that causes? Hesitation. It pulls their attention entirely away from the actual work. Just remember, environment shapes attention, and attention shapes action.
Okay, so now that we understand that loop, we really need to talk about how we present choices to young learners, and why more isn't always better.
The crucial thing to understand here is that giving endless options doesn't actually create freedom. It just creates cognitive fog. Choice is literally only useful when a child can read the choices. Imagine walking into a bookstore where all the books are just heaped into one massive, unorganized pile on the floor. Instant overwhelm, right? Now compare that to clearly grouped sections. A teacher or parent has to offer a small, highly readable set of meaningful options so the child can easily compare them, completely avoiding that cognitive fog without needing an adult to rescue them.
And look, when they make a choice and start an activity, mistakes are absolutely going to happen. That's a given. But in this design system, errors should be visible without being humiliating. Think about a key refusing a wrong lock. The mismatch is super clear, but the lock isn't punishing you. Or think about water spilling from a pitcher. The physical feedback is completely honest, but it's not shameful. When you build honest feedback right into a material, the child can self-correct. They can look at it and say, "Oh, I see what happened there, I'll try again," completely bypassing the need for you to step in and fix it for them.
Let's step into our third section to redefine a word we use literally all the time but often get totally wrong: independence.
One of the absolute biggest misunderstandings out there is that independence just means leaving a child alone to fend for themselves. It really doesn't. True independence is the active removal of the support they don't need anymore. It's kind of like a parent putting healthy snacks on the very bottom shelf of the fridge so the kid can just grab one whenever they're hungry. When you put a complete, reachable material on a low shelf, you are making the world navigable for them.
As the adult in the room, your job is to strategically design the conditions. Think of yourself as a gardener preparing the soil. You decide what's offered and what gets removed. You're essentially protecting the child's internal learning process from constant verbal management. You aren't playing dictator and forcing the growth. You're just making sure absolutely nothing is blocking it.
All right, let's open up the practical toolkit. How do we actually pull this off? Here are the 3 main design levers you can pull to directly change behavior.
Notice how beautifully these 3 levers work together. Visibility is what they notice, accessibility is what they can actually reach, and sequence is what comes next. If you put an activity on a crowded, messy shelf, the child has to decode it first. But if it's visible, accessible, and has a very clear sequence, the activity literally carries the child forward. If a child begins an activity but then just wanders off halfway through, you almost certainly have a sequence problem. You can easily fix that by using trays that punctuate exactly where an activity begins and ends.
So write this memory tip down. See it, reach it, finish it. Trays and grouped components act a lot like punctuation in a sentence. They clearly show where an activity starts and resolves. This is exactly why open-ended play isn't automatically better in every situation. Sometimes it's just ambiguous and frustratingly hard to complete. We always want to preserve a super clear action path for the child. Now, even with the absolute best intentions, we all fall into a few predictable traps. Let's look at where those good intentions quietly break down. The trick here is avoiding extremes. As we talked about, giving endless choices creates a fog. Jumping in and fixing all their errors creates dependency. But take a close look at that last one, extreme minimalism. Stripping a room down too far, just so it looks good on social media, actually removes the invitation to work. A room shouldn't be calm just because it's completely understimulating. It should be calm because it's thoughtfully ordered. What we're aiming for is purposeful simplicity that is selectively rich.
Oh, and here is another massive mistake we adults make: interrupting repetition. When we see a child doing the exact same thing, like pouring water back and forth over and over, we instantly assume they must be bored and need a new distraction. But they aren't wasting time at all. Repetition is literally how they extract control from the action and stabilize that pattern in their nervous system. So whatever you do, don't interrupt them when they're in that zone.
Okay, let's wrap up our explainer by locking in everything we've just learned and putting your brand new expert judgment to the test.
We have covered so much ground today, moving way beyond simple wooden toys and calm color palettes. You now understand that this is a full-on behavioral system. The environment shapes attention, choices have to be legible, adults are strategic designers, and we shape behavior using visibility, accessibility, and sequence.
Let's think about a few rapid-fire practice scenarios you might see in your own spaces. A child keeps wandering away from scattered puzzle pieces. You don't need a stricter rule. You need to fix the physical sequence by putting it on a tray. What if a child can't start painting? Fix the accessibility and visibility of those art supplies. And if a child fits the wrong block into a hole, don't intervene. Just step back and rely on the visible error to do the teaching for you.
I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. As you go out and organize your homes, set up your classrooms, or build entirely new products, I challenge you to stop evaluating spaces by how pretty they look on the surface. Look closely at the room and ask yourself, what behavior is this design quietly making the path of least resistance? Thank you so much for joining me today, and happy designing.